This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast. This podcast is brought to you by the Herzog Foundation.
Time for school.
Hey, School Success Makers. Welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater. I'm joined by a new friend out of the great state of Texas, Travis Koch, who is the founder and head of school of West Christian Prep in Houston, Texas. And they are doing some really cool things, some very unique things with an all-boys school over there in Texas. And so we're going to dive into all things all-boys school today and what that looks like, what he's learned in the process, and why they're doing it that way. And so hoping, as always, you guys are able to take at least one thing away from today's episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. But before we jump into all that, of course, pass it off to our guests to introduce themselves. So Travis, welcome to the podcast today, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Excited to be a guest today.
We're going to have a blast, and everybody gets the same question before we jump in. And it's, if I was to visit you in Houston, Texas, what would you say, Mitchell? You need to eat this and do this to experience Houston, Texas.
Right. So the thing you would need to do is go to the Houston Livestock Rodeo, which is every spring, pretty much the entire month of March. And there are every Texas delicacy that you could imagine. The two I would say you'd have to get while there would be Texas brisket. There is other good barbecue around the country, but I think Texas does brisket best, and Tex-Mex. And so the original kind of restaurant that brought fajitas to the commercial market is Ninfa's. And if they don't have a stand at the rodeo, the original one's right downtown. You can go get a great meal.
Man, that sounds delicious, because I love that stuff. And I love brisket's my favorite cut of meat. If I go to a barbecue place, I'm typically going brisket. I'm not going pulled pork. I'm going brisket. And I love to smoke. I even smoke a butt or a brisket here at the house. So that's sounds good. Give me the difference though. What's a brisket in Texas compared to a brisket anywhere else? What would you say is unique to the Texas one?
Well, I couldn't tell you. I would not eat brisket out of the state of Texas. Typically, I rarely eat it out of my house, and so I'm the same way. I rarely pay for it here in town, but right, I couldn't tell you what brisket outside of the Republic tastes like. So
Okay.
sorry about that.
Well, two birds with one stone though. So it sounds like I can go there and take in the festivities and then have some Tex-Mex and barbecue is what you're saying, right?
Yeah, the rodeo. So we were military for 25 years and married for about 20 of that. And, our boys, we would bring them back every spring break. We'd come back to Texas and we would take them to the Houston Livestock Rodeo. And so if you've never been to a rodeo, it's amazing. There's typically a good concert that night, tons of rides, and amazing food.
Sweet. And so it's not even the state fair. It's just like a whole another fair on its own, It's like rides.
Correct. State fair happens up in Dallas. That's correct. This is in the spring down in Houston. And I'm biased slightly between the two. So.
Okay. I love it. Well, I love it. Thank you for the recommendation. I'll have to make myself make my way out to Houston. I've driven through Houston. I've never actually stopped in Houston. I remember my only memory of Houston is one of the most stressful roadways that I had gone on because I was pulling an RV behind our truck, 35-foot trailer through downtown rush hour Houston traffic. And I just was like a white knuckling it, like, oh my goodness, stay in my lane as I was going through Houston. I was like, I don't like this at all, but we survived, no accidents. So it was good. It's my only memory of Houston. So,
well, it's 10 lanes. I think it's about 10 lanes wide each direction. The interstate that runs east-west now. So there's plenty of space for the RV.
Perfect. Well, hey, before we jump in, I know you already shared a little bit about military background. Give me a little bit more background on who Travis is, as well as West Christian Prep. And then, of course, I have some specific questions for you guys about the school.
Sure. I was born here in Houston, grew up mostly on the East Coast, ended up at the Air Force Academy, and always felt this calling into the education space, really from high school. Some men that invaded my school and introduced me to the gospel. And since then, I ended up serving. I was in education in the Air Force. I ended up being the head of school, if you will, for the F-22 schoolhouse. So I got to fly jets. I met a Houstonian on a blind date. Our mom set us up here in town, and that 27 years ago. So our 25th anniversary is coming up. We knew we were going to come back here. Our parents are here. And so in the summer of 19, we got back to Houston. We had 2 boys along the way, and both of them entered Christian schools here in town when we got back to Houston. I started serving at one of them. While I was there, I felt like there was a difference between the boys and the girls on campus. I'm a boy dad, so I was taking notes, if you will, on how the boys were doing. The girls seemed to be really flourishing. I mean, but the boys, a number of them, and I was a lacrosse coach as well, kind of seemed to be floundering. And so I didn't really understand why. I started looking internally at some of the things that my hunches were telling me that actually were true, but quickly came to find out that was actually a national problem. So it wasn't just our school, but across the country, boys are struggling in the standard school environment. And so started researching the problem, found a bunch of experts kind of around the country that talk about gender specifics in education and what that looks like. And yeah, had a dream about 2.5 years ago about an all boys Christian school. There's a really good one here in town called 𝑊𝑒𝑠𝑡 Academy that serves mostly our Catholic community. That came out of a school called the Heights out of DC. And our younger son actually had gotten into Western, and we fell in love with the model, but had this dream. It was very detailed. I shared the vision with some friends the next day who were ready to go buy land and launch an all boys Christian school here in town. I should have let them buy the land. But yeah, I like to say I didn't get on a boat to Tarshish, but I didn't start walking to Nineveh right away. It took a few weeks. I knew I was supposed to leave the teaching coaching space where I was. And through the summer of 23, lots of prayer and networking, counsel, time in the Word, came out of that in September of 23 with the goal to launch what is now West Christian Prep. So we started a small nonprofit called His Way Education, where we try to advance young men through Christian education. We think there's 3 ways to do that. One is by starting all boys Christian schools. One is by exporting the best practices for boys and sharing that with communities that might need help with their boys. And one is by building male faculty. And so we teamed with the Herzog Foundation in January of 24 and mapped out about an 18-month strategic plan to launch West Christian Prep. And we opened a few months ago here, August of 25, in West Houston with 11 boys. So yeah, it's amazing. Lots of details to it, but super thrilled. Just finished our first quarter, got outstanding feedback from the parents at all the parent-teacher conferences. And yeah, just feel fortunate to be serving the community here in town.
Hey, school success makers, Mitchell here. I just want to take a really quick break from the show to give a big, huge shout out to the Herzog Foundation. I absolutely love the Herzog Foundation. I've been friends and partners with them for a couple of years now, but we're bringing it to a whole new level. And I'm excited to share that our very own School Success podcast is now featured on the Herzog Foundation Podcast Network. The Herzog Foundation is a powerhouse of resources designed to support schools like yours, from free training events through the Herzog Foundation Institute to their incredible online news publication, The Lion, and of course, our new podcast, Home. They have everything you need to stay informed and inspired. And if you're dreaming of starting your own Christian school or co-op, don't miss their online course, Schoolbox. It's a fantastic resource to help you get started on the right foot. At School Success, we're proud to partner with the Herzog Foundation to bring you these valuable tools and insights. So visit herzogfoundation.com to explore all they have to offer. Trust me, you won't want to miss out on these amazing opportunities for growth and success. And I love all the people over there, and I know you guys will too. So please go check them out, and you won't be disappointed. Now, back to the show. Love it. Well, I love it. You followed the call of the Lord on your life for starting this, and that you followed through. I love the Jonah reference for you didn't go all the way to Tarshish, but you didn't go all straight to Nineveh. But you got there. So you're there, and you're ministering. You're loving on these boys. That's awesome. So with that, I know comes some questions I have for you and what you guys are doing. You had mentioned, I know, in multiple things on our first call that we had about, like, we need to be creating environments for boys to succeed. What are some of those things we can do to create environments for boys to succeed?
Right. So there's a few things with some of the experts that we've come across here in our country. Some of the forums. The Heights has a great forum that talks about what that looks like. What is best for boys? And so for us, we use a Matthew 4:19 model. And so in that, you see Christ call his early church. He says, "Hey, follow me. I'm going to make you how to be a fisher of men." And there's three elements I think that help boys. The first one of those is, our sons need men to follow. They need role models to look up to. And unfortunately, that number has gone down. So in the 80s, where it was about one out of every three men or women in education was a man, so about 33%. That's dropped down in the K through 8 space. It's less than 20%. So less than 1 out of 5 educators are men. And so our boys don't have these role models per se to look to and gain an understanding of what it means to be a man per se. So we have all male faculty. The men that we have found to do this, I'm the only one without a doctorate currently at our elementary school. And so we had 44 candidates that came out of the woodwork, just love the project that we're doing and want to be a part of it. And so they're out there. The trick is, hey, what does that look like in terms of incentivizing men to come and lead in the school? So that's one, is the followership piece. The second piece is the teaching piece. And so in a co-ed space, it's challenging to have both the pedagogy, how we teach, and the curricula, what we teach, to resonate both with boys and girls. They're different vessels. There's different things that excite them. Not all the time. Good teaching is good teaching. But for example, for our boys, I teach math and language arts first thing in the morning. If I were to take our math book out, we have a test tomorrow. If I take the math book out and say, hey, let's work through these problems, and they have to sit quietly for the entire 45 minutes and just work the problems, they're going to be fidgeting and moving all around and all this stuff and maybe not that excited. If I say, hey, let's get your whiteboards out and we're going to have a competition to see who can get the most number of these correct, they literally sprint to their cubbies, grab their whiteboards, and they're sitting down. It's like they're salivating to get the next question. So that's pedagogy. Can you make it competitive for boys? Can you make it engaging? The curricula, I'll give you an example of my younger son. He last year was in 6th grade, not at our school, but at a great school here in town. And in his literature class, he read this wonderful book about adventure. He comes to me and says, Dad, can you wake me up early before school? I want to get up and read. This story is so good, I want to read. And of course, I'm losing my mind that he's that excited and his intellectual intrigue is spurred. A couple months later, I go, hey, well, what are you reading now? And he's like, it's this book about somebody and kind of their feelings. And, and so what we've tried to do is have a pedagogy and a curricula that really resonates with the boys' hearts. So we read stories about adventure. We sing songs that are masculine. We do art projects. We just did one today. We did art projects of army scenes, and these guys are drawing things kinetic opposed to the detail. And so that's kind of what we're doing with the teaching, is we want it completely geared towards boys. And then the third part is we want them to be able to fish. And I don't mean disciple, because they're not ready for that. But what I do mean is we need to create spaces where these boys can run with scissors and not be punished. Everyone has been telling them their entire life, do not run with scissors. Oh my goodness, don't run with scissors. And turns out you can run with scissors, and you're going to fall down, and you might cut yourself sometimes. But they're not going to grow unless they make mistakes and are in an environment that's safe enough for them to recover from those. And so, we have a philosophy here that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's okay to be sideways per se, and then to recover from those things. So I think those are 3 things that are really key for our boys.
I love the part you shared about, like, it needs to be an environment that's safe for them to fail and where they know they can fail, and not just be like, oh man, if this happens, and if Mr. Koch finds out that I did this, oh my goodness, like that's a horrible, obviously, environment for them to learn in. If they know, you know what, I'm going to do this, and he's probably going to be like, that probably wasn't the best decision, but hey, now next time, like, this is what we're going to do for the next time. And so I love that you've given them an environment where they can grow in and learn in. You'd mentioned too, like in our first call, about how you felt that boys were floundering in the current system, not yours, but like in the current system, and girls were flourishing. Why do you think that is? And is that still true? Like what you see in the system of what the difference between girls and boys in the system?
Right. That's a big question. I can't speak to all the details, not in the allotted time that we have. But what I will tell you is that, like I mentioned before, it's challenging to tailor to both genders in one environment. And so, for example, take art class, for example. Um, so, boys and girls' eyes, Dr. Leonard Sachs, Dr. Gurian, they talk about this. There's physiological differences in how boys and girls see. Girls are much better at seeing detail, at seeing color palette, at seeing all the intricacies. And so, compared to boys who are going to see kinetic motion, maybe spatial alignment, patterns, etc. And so, if you put Susie and Billy right next to each other, and you give them the 64 box of crayons, and you say, draw whatever you want. Typically, Susie's going to use about half the box. It's going to be all these wonderful details. It's going to be a picture that of, let's say, a house with all the shutters, all the flowers. The people are going to have all the facial features, all of this great detail. Now, granted, I'm making generalities, to where a boy might use one color, black or blue or gray. On average, they'll use about half of what girls will use in drawing whatever they want. And most of the time, it's going to be something kinetic in nature. And so it'll be somebody throwing a football, like the army battles that our boys drew earlier of like projectiles, whether that's missiles or cannon artillery or something along those lines. And that teacher who's running the classroom is going to come by and look at those two pictures. And the teacher might have a bias just because what their eye sees or what they're used to seeing. And so Dr. Sachs has a good saying: we shouldn't necessarily try to make them draw how we do. We should help them make their drawings better. And so it might be tough for a child to hear criticism that's coming from a different perspective on what they are trying to convey. That's one very small example. But when 80% of the educators in the space are women, they more likely are going to carry those biases that they like. They're probably going to see detail more. They're going to probably see more color. They're probably going to see things that maybe just align with them better. Where for the boys that are in the room, which is typically 50% in a gender co-gender school environment, they might not really resonate kind of with that half the population, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% resonate with that because I think about my wife is very, very detailed with what I think she asks for or does or what thinks about, and I'm like, my mind does not go that way. A perfect example is when my wife and I watch a movie. She's very big on like all the things going on in the movie, the details, the score, which I didn't even know what that was until I married her, that the score is the music in the background. And so I remember we got done watching Interstellar. It's a specific one I remember with Matthew McConaughey, and we were in the theaters and we got done. And have you seen the movie? Make sure this makes sense while we're watching. No? Okay. So we're like, there's a lot going on in that movie. It's very well done, but literally we got done and she goes, "That I think is my favorite movie I've ever seen in my entire life." And I looked at her, I was like, "I'm not really sure what happened in the movie." And she's like, "Are you serious? Like, it had this and this." And I was like, "I don't get it. I'm really confused." And she explained it, and she could explain this movie she just saw. And then she goes, "Oh, and the score in that movie was so great." And I was like, "Well, what's the score?" And that's when I learned what a score was. She was like, "It's the music in the movie." I go, "There was music in the movie?" I was like, "I didn't even know that." And so I watch a movie for what it is. Like, oh, it was a good movie. Moving on. Like, I just don't care about details. That's definitely the man's mind of myself. So I get this. This makes a lot of sense to me.
Right. Yeah. And it might not just be art, right? It could be in writing where a girl might be much more in tune with her emotions. And so her short story, might line up with kind of the emotional trauma or the details or something along those lines, and going through all of those, what they're wearing, what, the scene looks like, all of these things. You might not even get the name in a short story that a boy writes of who the character is, but he was on a car chase as the police were running after him or whatever it was. And it was completely kinetic the entire time. So it's tough, I think. And there are teachers that can do it. Don't get me wrong, but we are never asked as educators to walk in and kind of check our gender at the door. And unfortunately, I think for both some of our boys and girls, they're asked to do that some days, kind of depending on the educator or on the teacher that's in charge.
Do you feel like there's anything in society that's like not even just the school side, then that's built towards one side or the other that has been catered to that, where we have to live inside of it without maybe I'm not even thinking about that? That's actually happening right now outside of the schools.
Right. Yeah. I think, I think here for a number of years, what I will say is when I talk to grandparents, when grandparents grew up, the television shows were Father Knows Best, things along those lines, where maybe the dad was kind of the hero of the show. When we grew up, or when I grew up, I'm older than you, Homer Simpson was the character, and it was like, well, dad's a joke,
Yeah.
right? Now our kids are growing up, and there are messages that are coming out that literally say, and I won't name the company, but their motto is, don't be your parents, definitely don't be your dad. Your dad is a goon. Definitely don't be him. And so I think culturally, there's some things that have changed in the past 3 generations that if we're not paying attention to, it could impact how we raise our sons and what that looks like and the messages that they need to hear. So yes, I do think there are cultural influences of that, and those have baked into the education space primarily through the leaders of a lot of our educational systems.
That's a very good point. So I love when I'm thinking about the shows that are out there, and yeah, they make that just the goof and the silly, which is a part of like being, of course, silly. Like I'm a very silly dad, like play dad, all that stuff. But obviously I lead my family well. I know how to lead the family, all that. I think there's a happy medium. And I get what you're saying. Like the Homer Simpson's a perfect example of like, oh my goodness, like don't be Homer Simpson type of thing. And, but we kind of brought this up actually at our marriage group we had on Tuesday night, where we were saying we're studying fruits of the spirit. We're on goodness on Tuesday, and we're talking about like, what is the good things we're letting inside, that we're looking at? And it's like, is it, the shows we're watching where we like go, well, it's not bad. And we're like, yeah, but what is bad or what is good? And like, are we like letting these things in? Like, let's just say The Simpsons as an example, where you're like, oh, there's not anything horrible inside of it. Yeah, but what are you watching that's slowly working in where we go, oh, that's okay. Like what we see now, because we've seen it for years, we're saying is okay, or that's normal. That's, oh, dads are just that way, or men are just that way, where we're like, man, where did that come from? And has it been years in the making of us having that come in our minds that we think it's normal? And so I love that point. I hate that point, but I love that point because it makes a lot of sense.
Well, we fence it. And so, on our campus, we are completely screen free. There's 2 things culturally that are destroying boys. And if you're a parent out there and listening, yeah, I hope you hear me on this, is the 2 for boys in particular are video games and exposure to pornography. And so the average age in the United States, unfortunately for our boys, is 3rd grade, is that our boys are getting exposed to pornography. And mostly it's because, so much of the country is carrying one of these in their pocket. And so for us, it's a no-brainer. There are no screens, on our campus. There are no phones allowed, no smartwatches. We don't, have TVs. We don't have, things mounted to where that media is coming in. We think, dialing in analog to the great books and actually holding something tactile. Boys are tactile creatures. And reading these stories that are just completely filled with things that are true and good and beautiful. We want them to be exposed to those things. We don't want them to be, exposed to things that are going to kill and steal and destroy their soul or get them sideways. And so for parents, I encourage you, do not buy your kid a cell phone. There's a group called Wait Till 8th. Jonathan Haidt would recommend 9th grade. This other boys school here in town, Western, they're amazing. They literally bought a shredder. This is, made the educational circles that if they find a phone on their campus, it goes directly into the metal shredder. It comes out on all these metal chips, just because not even for that kid, but that they would expose their buddy to something that family has entrusted the school with, to say, hey, we entrusted our son to you, and some kid is showing him these pictures at a young age that he shouldn't be exposed to. It's not fair. It's not safe. I didn't have to worry about that when I was a kid. And unfortunately, our sons are having to worry about that right now. And so, yeah, we need to fence it. And there are measures that we can take. And we're seeing the pendulum swing in a good direction of schools being phone free. all of these things. But those would be two things that I would tell parents. And there might be some more in that, Mitchell, if you'd like. I can talk about some things that parents might want to look at for their schools to see if they're in a boy-friendly space.
I would actually love you to dive into that a little bit. Before you do, real quick, I had just a random question I thought of as you're going. When you're talking about schools, you guys don't have phones, and I've heard a lot of other schools doing the phone lockers and different things on that side. I randomly just thought, man, do you feel like youth groups should be doing this as well, where they say, hey, you're not allowed to even bring your phone to church, or if it is, it cannot come out? Because I know the defense always, because we had students last night where these kids are like, I'm like, hey, put your phone away or whatever it is. They're like, well, my mom's trying to text me. My mom's trying to get a hold of me. And it's like, okay. Now, granted, when I say this, the group is ginormous. Like we have 500 students out on Wednesday night. So it's not like it's 10 kids and I know all their parents and all that stuff. So it's a different beast. But I'm like, I hate the phones being at students and at youth groups. So what, just your opinion, what do you think? Should youth groups do the same thing?
Yeah, I think so. If we were to look at a big pie chart on education, or a typical high school kid, kind of their waking hours, which is about 6,000 hours a year. Unfortunately, half of that, about 3,000 hours a year, they're on one of these devices. And so any space that we can prevent that, because this thing is completely flooded with culture, which is not the healthiest right now, I don't think, for our kids. If we can prevent them from being in a space where that's going to be the case, or that's going to be coming in, I'm all for it. Unfortunately, 50 hours a year, kids are in church. Unfortunately, only about 100 hours a year, they're engaged one-on-one with mom or dad. That's about 15 minutes a day. They're in school for 1,500 hours a year. And so that's about a fourth of that pie chart. If we can create spaces where the gospel's prevalent, where they have men and women that are modeling what it means to be an image bearer and, a gospel-led adult, that's a much better picture than anything that they're going to get through their phone. So yes, for youth groups, for schools, I would encourage those. And the parents will figure it out. I think you recently had somebody, I saw one of your promos where the school went completely phone free, and the head of school was like, we thought we were going to get some pushback from this. And it turns out the parents love it. Yeah. And so unfortunately, kids are showing up to school with burner phones, and they put that in the pouch, and then mom sometimes will slip the other one in because they want that constant contact. I went through school without any of that. I'm pretty sure you went through school without any of that. We can create processes where kids have access to communication, and really is for the protection of these boys and girls.
Hey, I just want to take a really quick break from the podcast to highlight one of our amazing partners and sponsors, ClassReach. If you're a new school administrator or founder and are struggling to keep up with all the hassles of planting a new school, like collecting tuition, communicating with parents, or handling student data, then you need ClassReach. ClassReach is the all-in-one software that helps with everything from admissions and tuition to classroom management and parent communications. Sign up for a free consultation with one of their school specialists and see how ClassReach can help your school grow today. You guys can check them out online, classreach.com. They are a kingdom-minded company, and I love their leadership team there. I've become friends with a lot of them. They truly are a great company. I support them, and I love them, and you guys will love them too. Check them out at classreach.com. Now, back to the show. Yeah, I would love it. Can we dive in actually you went over some stats quick that were really good that I would love to dive into, like when you talk about the pie chart, because I just shared this with our men's group that I lead, and this marriage group that we lead is like 16,000 hours a year in their lifetime from kindergarten to 12th grade on average is what a student spends. And I'm like telling this to them going, hey, like wherever your kid is, let's just say public school, private school, it doesn't even matter at this point for that. Just saying, like, who do you want having that influence for 16,000 hours when you just said the same thing, like the average amount of time that parents spend with their kids is minimal. And like you specifically said, like, intentional, like good time is like 15 minutes. And I was like, I see that because we're so busy. We're jumping into sports and extracurriculars and all these things. We don't actually even parents aren't really, I know it sounds bad and people are going to probably get mad, but like, we're not really raising our kids. The schools are like raising our kids. They're spending the majority of the time actually with the teachers and not as much time with their mom and dad. And so like, you broke that down with the phone time. I would love you to just kind of go over that. Any other ones you had that you mentioned for where are these students' times going, just so people can go, holy smokes. Like, yeah, I never thought about it in an actual like tangible way like that.
Right. So I have a chart that I show folks when we talk about the value of Christian education and what that means. And, biblically, there's nothing in there about what a Christian school is like, or the responsibilities of a Christian school. It does talk about the parents, and it does talk about the church and responsibilities that both of those have in raising young ones. But unfortunately, just the time, the stats are where they are. When 50 hours a year they're at church, that's 1 hour a week on average for a high school kid. 2 hours a week they're engaged with mom and dad. About 50 hours a week they're on this, and then 40 hours a week they could be in school. You go, well, what does that look like? We have a picture of an iceberg that we present in our parent preview. Kind of the top of the iceberg is what most schools focus on. It's the numbers, it's the SAT scores, the AP pass rates, maybe some sports and arts accomplishments. That's mostly the skills that schools market and that they send out. There is a huge development of that child underneath the water. That is their heart, that is their character. Warren Buffett is quoted saying, the worst thing for your company would be someone who's exceptionally talented and a tremendous work ethic and terrible character. They're going to torpedo your organization, right? Mm-hmm. So for us, we think that heart foundation is as important as the academic foundation. And we think that heart foundation is based on the water or the community that mom and dad get to put their kids during the day, during school. Yeah, praise God. Senate Bill 2 passed. School choice is coming to Texas and is potentially opening the floodgates for private Christian school to flourish here in Texas. That's why groups like Herzog Society of Classical Learning, that have this vision of this education reformation. The North American Missions Board is another one that is doing these efforts. And so educators, we have an opportunity where the state is going to be writing checks to the church, if you will, but the church will only be able to utilize those through Christian education. But it's $1 billion. Florida now is about $4 billion a year. So that could help, families, if you will, actually who have a choice now to where do they put, Billy or Susie, And so for us, we do believe that Matthew 4:19 model of saying, hey, follow me, I'm going to make you a fisher of men. The men and women that your school are around, they can't help it. More of that character is caught than it is ever taught. They're going to see it and assimilate to that a lot more than they're ever going to be able to read a book or follow a manual and then ascribe that character. And so that's why for us at West Christian Prep, we want strong, godly men in the leadership roles in front of the classroom, because we want those boys to grow into, the examples that are in front of them. And so it's a super, super exciting time for Christian education. We'll see, what the Lord does. Anyway, I can't believe I get to be a part of it. I used to be excited about flying airplanes and jets and all this stuff, and now I'm like totally jazzed about Christian ed. So,
amen. And it's moving in a fast, and it's moving in a really good direction from what I've seen from all across the U.S., which is exciting, especially with the school choice bills. Can't believe it took Texas so long to finally get it through, but they got it through, so that's good. You guys are doing some stuff with role model stuff. I know you kind of just mentioned it a little bit with like adults, but is there another side of role models that you're doing there at West Christian?
Right. So, all of our teachers, part of the reason why we need male faculty is because we do what's called a shoulder-to-shoulder program. And so this is a one-on-one mentoring program that we have where, I've got, 3 of these boys where about once a month we walk. We actually adopted this best practice, from the Heights, where they have in different categories. For us, it's in wisdom, it's in stature, and it's in grace. And we spend time just walking shoulder to shoulder, which is a good technique for boys, not across, not face to face, because it's more confrontational. But if you're doing something, if you're working together, if you're walking, they're just going to open up more about the things that are going on in their lives. And so, for us, it's been a great program. We've gotten good feedback so far. The parent teacher conferences, the parents are telling us, oh, well, yeah, my son loves you, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, oh man, I'm pretty harsh to that guy. I'm glad that he loves me, but for these boys, they want to be held accountable. They want order. They want to grow into kind of these image bearers that God has created them to be. Not all the time, they don't, but we feel like the mentors and the role models that we have on campus is key to that.
You got any fun, interesting facts about just maybe how boys or girls learn differently, or like the makeup of like the current educational system? Anything kind of comes to mind where you're like, I thought this was fascinating, or this stat, or anything that kind of just comes to mind maybe we haven't talked about yet, that just, if you don't, totally fine. There's got to be some fun things that you've heard about what you've kind of experienced starting the school.
Yeah, they're different vessels. And so all I will say is, so Dr. Garian talks about boys and girls' brains and the activity of boys and girls' brains. And so there are different things, that they hear, that they don't hear. Light affects them differently, all this stuff. But for us, we found that about 35 minutes, boys have what I call useful consciousness. So if you're really grinding academically, you've got about a little over a half an hour before, the right side of their brain starts to fall asleep, and, they start tapping, or the wiggles, start to come into play. For a lot of teachers, they might see that and be like, hey, this boy's got a problem. He must have ADHD. Well, no, that's the vessel that they are. Their body is actually doing a normal physiological response to try to stay awake, to try to stay engaged. It's just incredibly annoying because that boy doesn't hear that tapping that he's doing with his pencil in order to, physically move. And so for us, we abate that by tons of time outside. The campus is open in the morning. The boys run and play. We had a dad in the second week pull up, he kind of rolls the window down of the giant SUV and he goes, I don't know what you guys are doing. I'm like, oh, here it comes. And he says, he's never wanted to go to school before, and now he's waiting for me at the door, telling me to hurry up. And so for us, whether it's boys or girls, you need to create learning environments that are fun. You need to create learning environments that are engaging. We're using the best practices, like I said, from these Opus Dei brothers that have gone before us on lots of movement, strong role models, analog, old school, great books, liberal arts education. And we're seeing tremendous results. So God be glorified for all of that.
That's awesome. Well, obviously you just opened up, I know, this fall. Those that are listening, if maybe they're, let's say, maybe looking to start their own school or start a all girls, all boys school, you've now started, I know you're just finished first quarter. Anything you're like, man, I wish I had known this before, or if I could go back, I would have done this differently? Anything that kind of comes to mind as you kind of gotten to start here at West Christian?
Yeah, I don't know if I wish I would have known something differently, but what my one recommendation would be to pray, morning, noon, and night. Find a group of men and women that will pray with you. Our Heavenly Father is faithful, and it is amazing. There are too many stories to count on His provision. 11 boys in a school does not really help revenue model for the school leaders that are out there. And so we've had to fundraise, and 2 months before we opened, both the board and kind of our business manager, CFO, were looking at me going, what are we doing? There's no way it's going to happen. And through His provision, and the generosity of our community, we're up and running. We're providing an outstanding education. The one thing, besides praying, I would say, is get with Herzog, or get with one of this centers of excellence. The school box program, Jonathan and the team over there are outstanding. Learn. And so go to one of the Institute meetings or all of the Institute meetings. Sadie and the team have completely got it dialed in. I would say those two things: pray, and team with people that it's not their first rodeo. They've done it before, and so those would be my 2 bits of recommendation.
Okay, I know that was some advice, but I always have to ask everybody the same question as the last question before I close it out, which I know you've listened to episodes, it's coming. So see if there's anything else you got there ready to go. But all the school leaders listening, if you were to share one final piece of advice, what would that one final piece of advice be?
Yeah, well, I would encourage them to take a look at their boys. There are plenty of numbers that you could look up. Grade point averages. Typically, the top 10% or the top decile is 2/3 girls and 1/3 boys, and it's almost a linear line to the bottom decile where it's 2/3 boys and 1/3 girl. Look at the salutatorians and valedictorians for the past year. Look at National Honor Society participation rates, club participation rates, leadership. There's tons of stats on your campus that you can look at. Reach out to me if you'd like some ideas. But here are a few things that we think parents and school leaders should be looking at. Hey, do the boys on your campus have good male role models? We talked about some of the numbers. Maybe that's an HR thing for the school leaders. Is there time for them to move? I'm seeing schools that are taking away PE or they're taking away recess. And for these boys, 5th, 6th, 7th grade, they need to move. It's better for all of us as humans, but especially for boys to be able to, flourish in the classroom. Do they enjoy what they're learning? So is the curricula, I met a school leader who's in Idaho. They separate their boys and girls. There's one that's in Virginia that does the same thing in those awkward junior high years where they can tailor those curricula. They can allow that Socratic discussion not be co-ed, but single gender to where the boys have to speak during that discussion. Are they excited on how they're learning? Are they telling you stories? Oh, this happened in class today. This was a riot. And is it safe to mess up? The suspension rates and expulsion rates across the country are 2-to-1, boys to girls. And so take a look at your own numbers, take an inventory. If you come up and you go, I think we have an issue here, no school leader is going to want to come out and put that on Facebook, but reach out, find somebody that can help. I don't know what my role in that could be or how I could help, but please reach out to me. Would be happy to discuss it with you, or even to be able to have somebody else as a school leader to take a look at your numbers and say, yeah, I think there are some biases maybe in your school, and then to be able to pray and think through some strategies in order to advance boys. So very grateful for the time, Mitchell. Thank you for having me as a guest. Really a blessing. And like I said, if there's any way that I can be of help to any school leaders out there, please give me a call.
Awesome, man. That was fantastic advice to close us out. Obviously, I know school's in session. Thank you for taking time out of your day from your 11 boys to chat about what you guys are doing at West Christian. I love what you're doing. Big fan. And I'm looking forward to seeing you guys grow over these years where you can love and pour into more of these students in Texas. So thanks for taking the time today, Travis.
Amen. Thank you. Thank you. God bless you.
Well, another huge shout out and a thank you to our guests for taking time and being on the podcast today. I love the people that I get to interview in this podcast. And as always, I'm hoping you guys are able to take at least one thing away from today's episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Before you guys go, I do want to make sure you are aware of our 3 free resources available here at School Success. And the first one is, of course, the podcast that you're listening to right now. We are dropping weekly episodes every single Monday morning. We want to make sure you guys aren't missing out. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. And if you haven't left a 5-star review, we would love a 5-star review as well. The second one is on our website, schoolsuccessmakers.com. In the top right-hand corner is a button, School Success Report. You just click that and sign up for that. We send it directly to your inbox every single week. It's full of different articles our team has either found or written to help you, the school leader, be more successful. And last but not least is our free Facebook community called School Success Makers. It's an awesome place. I'm personally in there. I'd love to see you in there as well. Get some good community around you, ask questions, and just have some fun. So make sure you are joining our free Facebook community. We'd love to see you in there. All right, guys. Well, that's it for today. We'll be back here next week with another awesome guest as usual on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then. The views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of the Herzog Foundation.